as you know, I am very fond of spending as much as possible a pitcher for MLB DFS because usually the high-salaried guys are high-salaried for a reason. They've got strikeout juice. We want that strikeout juice no matter what the cost may be. For today, even though we got Tyler Glasnow and Aaron Nola on the slate, I actually think the mid-range at pitcher is really attractive. And there are two guys there specifically who I like more than both Glasnow and Nola. We'll go through that for today, get you set for MLB DFS, and run down how I'm seeing things for Tuesday's slate. Welcome on into the solo shot. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com, here to break down Tuesday's 14-game main slate with lock set for 7:05 for this evening. Now, unlike last Friday, there are no big weather notes for today because, thankfully, there's not an entire weather system enveloping the entire East Coast. But there is a park factor note. The Toronto Blue Jays will be playing their games in Buffalo now. It's a very different park from a weather perspective than Dunedin. It still played like a hitter-friendly park last year. But for today, it's just 65 degrees. So I would downgrade expectations on Blue Jays games relative to where they were earlier in the year because of the park change. So keep that in mind. When you're checking out the Jays, make sure you account for the fact that it's 65 degrees versus the 80 to 85 it had been in Dunedin for most of this spring. We'll take a look at the top pitchers for today, including one in that game in just a bit. But first, a quick reminder to make sure you are subscribed to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. Brandon Gadula is back with us today. We'll talk some PGA for the Memorial Tournament. That is today, 9 or 10 a.m. on YouTube and up on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. After that, UFC this week via Austin Swaim. I will have NASCAR for you later on as well. So a lot of good stuff cooking here on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. Make sure you are subscribed no matter where you get your podcasts. And if you like what you hear, leave us a rating and review as well. Also, a quick reminder, we do have our MLB Q&As back this week, Tuesday through Friday. It's at 4 p.m. each day. We also have PGA Q&A today, 3:30 with Brandon Gadula. So make sure you subscribe to the numberFire, the FanDuel YouTube page, Twitch, Facebook, and Twitter as well. Get those questions in for MLB at 4 p.m. and also for PGA 3:30 every Tuesday. Hey, basketball fans, the 2021 NBA playoffs are in full swing. FanDuel is offering a special promotion, NBA risk-free same-game parlay. All you have to do is place a 3+ leg same-game parlay on an NBA playoff game taking place during an eligible week. If your bet loses, you will be refunded in site credit, a maximum of $10. Head over to FanDuel Sportsbook today and place a same-game parlay on an NBA playoff game of your choice. Get involved and win alongside your favorite team. Must be 21 plus and present in Colorado, Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, or West Virginia. Refund issued as a non-withdrawable site credit that expires in 7 days. Max refund $10. Terms apply. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In Colorado, call 1-800-522-4700. In Iowa, 1-800-BETS-OFF. In Indiana, 1-800-9-WITH-IT. For confidential help in Michigan, 1-800-270-7117. In Tennessee, call the Red Line at 1-800-889-9789. Or in West Virginia, visit 1-800-GAMBLER.net. Let's take a look at the pitching preview for this Tuesday slate, where Tyler Glasnow is the highest salary pitcher. He checks in at $10,700. We got Aaron Nola at $10,100. Alex Wood, off to a nice start this year, is $9,900. Domingo Germán is $9,700. Steven Strasburg is $95,000. Chris Bassett is $93,000. Robbie Ray is $91,000. Then we have Kyle Hendricks, Max Fried, Matthew Boyd, Germán Marquez, Luis Garcia, and Sandy Alcantara as the others at $8,000 or higher. Now, I think Glasnow hasn't played tonight. He's facing the Yankees. Tough spot, but he's a good pitcher. So I think that Glasnow is an option. Nola could be too against the Reds. But my favorite guy for this week is a guy we talked about last week. He's $9,300. That's Chris Bassett. And talking about Bassett last week worked out really well. He had 9 strikeouts in a complete game shutout. That was against the Angels. His second consecutive matchup against them. Tonight he gets the Mariners. And I'm going to go back to the well once again with Bassett for tonight. We talked going in about how Bassett was throwing a slider more often. It's a pitch he doesn't really throw to lefties, and the Mariners are almost all lefties. So we could say, okay, we want to toss out this data on Bassett, look at the full season, but even if we look at just the span we've had recently with Bassett, with that slider usage being up, he's still getting strikeouts against lefties. It's a 7-start sample, and in that time, he has a 29% strikeout rate against both righties and lefties. That means I'm not going to worry too much about the handedness of the opposing team. And overall, in those 7 starts, he's been tremendous. With a 2.87 skill interactive ERA, he's got a 30% strikeout rate with a 3% walk rate. The Mariners, 25% strikeout rate against righties with an 86 WRC plus. So what we have here with Bassett is a plus matchup, both in terms of floor and ceiling, and he has shown that he can do well even in tougher matchups than this. This is the first time the Mariners have seen him all year, too. So it's a fresh matchup. I think that all adds up really well to make Bassett the top starter for tonight. There is definitely some risk there because the sample of Bassett being a good DFS asset is not as big as the sample on Tyler Glasnow, but I still think Bassett deserves to be the top guy for tonight. Now, risk is a key word for our second pitcher, too, because I haven't gotten to Robbie Ray much this year. I've spent the whole season assuming he would regress back to in his previous form, which is a lot of walks and a lot of hard contact. That meant that even when the strikeouts were rising, it didn't really matter for me because I thought the other stuff would drag him down. The hard contact is still there. Like, that part was a correct assumption. That's why I can't put him above Bassett, and that's why there is risk here tonight. But the walks are coming down, and that helps a lot. So I actually like him tonight against the Marlins. Ray started this year with low slider usage, and he was getting decent results, but he was still walking a few guys, and the strikeouts were down. Over the past 5 outings, the slider usage has been creeping back up, and the strikeouts have followed. Across those 5 starts, Ray has a 2.59 skill interactive ERA. His strikeout rate is 33%, and his walk rate is at 3%. He has 9 strikeouts in 3 out of those 5 starts. His ERA is 4.60, so that's not great, and it's largely due to the hard contact. He's let up 10 home runs in those 5 starts. So again, the risk is still there. Some parts of the Robbie Ray experience are still in place from what they were before. It does help, though, the Marlins are not a big power team. They have a 94 WRC plus against lefties. They're about middle of the pack in fly ball rates, and they do strike out. They have a 28% strikeout rate. So the floor here for Robbie Ray is not good because they could get to him, and that does matter. They gained a DH today. That matters too. But if we're talking about Ray, we're not talking about cash games. I think that Bassett is the clear cash game option. He's $9,300, pretty much the same salary. Good spot despite being on the road. So for Ray, we're talking about just tournaments, which means we're focusing mostly on just his ceiling, and I think the ceiling is pretty good here. So basically it depends on your risk tolerance. For me, I'm willing to take risks when I think the payoff is worth it, and I think that's the case for Ray tonight, which puts me on him here. So to me, Robbie Ray does deserve to sit atop our list at pitcher, or sit number 2 at pitcher behind Chris Bassett for tonight. Now, number 3 for me would be Tyler Glasnow, despite the match with the Yankees. So it would be, for me, Bassett, Ray, Glasnow. After them, we can get to a value play. And the top value play for me, it's actually going to be a guy in a tough matchup, but it's one where the pitcher has some strikeout upside. And that guy is Luis Garcia against the Red Sox. It's a really tough spot. I don't want to undersell that. It's a 110 WRC plus against righties of the Red Sox. They make a lot of hard contact. They rank 2nd in the league in ISO against righties. So similar to Ray, if you're not cool with the risk, this play is not for you. But I do like the upside, though. And the Red Sox will strike out. They have a 26% strikeout rate versus righties. They have a 7% walk rate. And Garcia's pretty dang good. He's been cutting back on his changeup usage over his past 5 starts. And in that time, he has a 3.24 skill interactive ERA with a 32% strikeout rate. That strikeout rate ranks 3rd on the slate behind just Robbie Ray and Tyler Glasnow. They're both in tough matchups, too. We've seen Garcia do this against some pretty tough teams. He had the Dodgers in there, the Yankees, the Angels, and that Angels game came before Mike Trout got hurt. So he's not simply feasting against tough or easier opponents. You know, he's facing the Red Sox tonight, but he's faced tough teams before, and he's measured up well. And it's also not just that sample where Garcia's been good. He has a 29% strikeout rate for the full season across 46 innings. That's pretty good, too. He just seems like he's a good pitcher, and he's $8,000 tonight. And that's low enough for me to be more accepting of the tough matchup. Again, it could go poorly. That's very possible, but I doubt that many people are on him here tonight, and he has a path to a really nice game. So again, I would rank Last Now above him after considering salary and all that stuff. But if you do want to spend down a pitcher, I think that Garcia is the best way for doing so. But overall, to me, the standouts for this slate are Chris Bassett and Robbie Ray in that mid-range at pitcher. So with Bassett and Ray being the top two guys, we do have a lot of salary flexibility for our stacks. The only problem is I don't know how much we'll actually need. We'll talk about some higher salary teams and things to watch. But for the top stacks, I actually think we have a lot of value bats here. One of them is via the Royals. They're facing Will Crowe tonight. He gets start for the Pirates, and the Royals are going to be my top stack of the day. Crowe checks the boxes we want for stacking. He lets up base runners and lets up hard contact. That's led to a 7.13 ERA across 35 and 1/3 innings across his career. For this year, Crowe's been in the rotation for 5 starts, and he's had fewer changeups. Over the past 5 starts, he's had fewer changeups, and in that time, he has a 20% strikeout rate with an 11% walk rate. The barrel rate against is 10.1%, and those numbers are in line with what happened to him in the minors as well. The Royals, not a great offense. They have a 91 WRC plus against righties. They're just 18th in ISO, but I still think there is enough juice here where they could produce a ceiling given how good this matchup is for tonight. I want to be high on them as a result here. Now, again, because of the salaries of the pitchers, I don't need to look for value plays, but objectively, Salvador Perez is under salaried at $2,600. I typically think of him mostly against lefties, but you look at his numbers against righties, they're pretty good too. He has a 221 ISO with a 37% hard hit rate. So I want both him and Carlos Santana, and that means we are locking up both catcher / first base and utility, but they're clearly the top 2 guys on the team outside of Alberto Mondesi. He's looked strong since coming back. So I think that Mondesi, in addition to Perez and Santana, those are the guys you want to focus on first. And those would be the focal points for me within a Royal stack. They're not going to break the bank by any means, but the upside there is definitely worth it. The Twins are facing Bruce Zimmerman for tonight, and I stacked against Zimmerman last week with the White Sox, which is a really tough task for a lefty. He was great. I still think we should stack the Twins against him tonight. Zimmerman in that game against Chicago had 5 innings. He allowed 1 run on 6 hits with 6 strikeouts. It was a really solid showing for him. But it wasn't a big deviation from what he was doing before. He did make some changes to his pitch mix, but it's not as impactful with him, though, because he doesn't have any true shutdown pitches that make you worry all that much. Like with Bassett, that slider is disgusting. So when I see his usage increase on that, it does worry me. It makes me feel good about him, I guess, from a pitching perspective, but it worried me for opposing teams. With Zimmerman, not as much. I would expect him to keep throwing his 4-seamer less, which is a good thing for him. But even with that assumption in place, he doesn't profile as someone we should avoid. In the 5 outings with fewer 4-seam fastballs, Zimmerman has a 20% strikeout rate with a 10.7% barrel rate, and he got by against the White Sox. I'm not sure how sustainable that is, though, and I think the Twins grade out well as a result of that. So to me, the Twins deserve to be number 2 on our list despite some potential for improvements out of Bruce Zimmerman. One guy who gets a decent bump up against lefties is Jorge Polanco. He has really good numbers this year in a small sample. He has a 47% hard hit rate with a 36% fly ball rate, minimal strikeouts, a 246 ISO. And with lefties, with left-handed numbers versus lefties, you want to be skeptical of just 2021 data because the sample will be so small. But Polanco back in 2019 had good batted ball numbers versus lefties too. So I don't think it's just a result of the small sample. I think that Polanco is a high-quality option at $2,600 in addition to the more powerful righties here on this team. Get into Nelson Cruz, no sweat for tonight given the salary as a pitcher, so you should be able to stack them with relative ease and feel good about the bats you are using. Now, once again, our third stack is one that is low-salaried. But the reason that it's low-salaried is, I guess it's kind of shocking to me that they are low-salaried. Neither offense at Coors Field tonight is all that good. And that's why I wasn't high on them for stacking. And that's why they weren't in my top 2. But Neither of them got a salary bump either. So we've actually got like legit value plays at Coors Field. That's enough for me to bite, and I'm going to rank the Rockies third for stacking. They're facing Dane Dunning, and I think Dunning is pretty solid. They keep him with shorter stints, which means he can, throw harder, stuff like that, and it's worked out really well. He's just letting up too much hard contact. He's been throwing his changeup more often over his past 6 starts. In that sample, Dunning has a 12% barrel rate against. He's allowed a 10% walk rate. All that has led to an inflated ERA for Dunning. A lot of that was against tougher teams, and the Rockies are truly hideous, so he could very well rebound here. But the combination of hard contact with the walks is tough to turn down at Coors Field, especially when the salaries are ridiculously low. So the Rockies, despite not having Trevor Story, still wind up being third on my list for tonight. And there are still some guys we can feel good about here, despite the fact the Rockies are putrid. Ryan McMahon is $3,000, got a lot of hard contact and a lot of fly balls against righties, good power numbers. Charlie Blackmon I don't want to use when he's $3,900, but he's $2,900, and I can get there pretty easily at that number. CJ Cron's power should come soon. Good batted ball numbers with a 42% hard hit rate and a 38% fly ball rate versus righties. He's $2,500. Raimel Tapia's speed makes him a pretty big bargain at $2,200. So weirdly, if you're looking at just bargain stacks, the Rockies grade out pretty well at Coors Field for tonight. So you can stack Coors easily, even if you're going glass now. And I think they do grade out number 3 for me behind the Royals and the Twins. As far as things to watch for tonight, the Rangers are also in play for stacking. They're the other team at Coors Field. They didn't get salary bumps either, but I'm not as into them. They're facing Herman Marquez, who is doing a really good job of limiting hard contact. He has a 1.7% barrel rate allowed over his past 8 starts. That's a long sample and not a lot of barrels. So that puts them down the list quite a bit. And I'm not going to rank them even 4th for tonight, but they're a consideration because low salaried at Coors Field. Marquez does have some flaws, so they could pay off, but not my favorite stack for tonight. 2 teams that would likely get buzzed tonight are the Astros and the Dodgers, and I'm okay with both, but I'm also fine having them a smidge lower on my list. The Astros are facing Garrett Richards. He's doing a really good job of limiting hard contact. He has a 5.6% barrel rate against over 10 starts. That's helped him keep his ERA low despite a high skill interactive ERA, but Richards does let up base runners, so I'm good with the Astros here, and I think that if you're looking for a place to dump some salary, I think the Astros probably wind up being the top option there. Pretty similar story for the Dodgers. They're facing John Gant. He has a low barrel rate against, and he's keeping his ERA in check as a result of that, so it's very similar to the Astros. But Gant has a 16% strikeout rate with a 15% walk rate. The Dodgers will get base runners tonight, and that can be worth something. I'd like to rank them a hair behind the Astros, but I will say both the Astros and the Dodgers check in above the Rangers for me. So if you're not going with one of the value stacks we talked about before, I would say Astros 1, Dodgers 2, both in the same tier. I'm okay being a bit lower on them, but hey, we got to spend that salary somewhere. I'm okay using it on the Astros and Dodgers for tonight. That is all the time that we have here for today on the Solo Shop. But once again, if you have any questions for today, back with you once again, 4 p.m. Eastern on the FanDuel YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Twitter pages. Brandon has you at 3:30 for golf. I'll hop on at 4 p.m. for MLB for today to get you set for the slate and take any questions you may have regarding the value pitchers, anything else that may be on your mind. Also, make sure you are subscribed to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts, you can find us, and make sure you leave a rating and review as well. If you have questions for me before 4 p.m., I am on Twitter at JimSannes, JimSannes. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcasts. Big thank you to Calvin Theobald, our video producer, for setting up the video broadcast for today. Thank you, Cal, as always. And thank you to everyone for tuning in. Good luck to you with your MLB DFS lineups for tonight. And we'll talk to you once again on Wednesday. This has been the Solo Shot right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network.